Let's dive into a period of great upheaval in English history, one that was completely dominated by the Civil War. Can you recall a time when a king's reign ended with his execution? That's what happened in the Age of Milton. The period from 1642 to 1660 was marked by a series of quarrels and alarms that led to the English Civil War. This era is also known for the Caroline era, which refers to the reign of Charles I, whose name comes from the Latin word carolus. The middle of this period was defined by spasmodic fighting that culminated in the execution of Charles I in 1649. This is a key event that has been asked in exam. The final portion of the period covers the rise and fall of Cromwell from 1654 to 1658 and the establishment of the Commonwealth. The period of great turmoil finally came to an end in 1660 with the restoration of the monarchy. Let's dive into the fascinating development of literature during the Age of Milton and the Civil War. Can you recall a time when political events completely changed the face of literature? That's what happened in the period from 1642 to 1660. During this time, there was a noticeable decline from the high standards of the Elizabethan era. The Civil War created a tense atmosphere, narrowing the focus of literature and making it more intense and bitter. This was a challenging time for writers, especially for the drama. Hold that thought, because the age was not dramatic in its temper and the theatres were closed in 1642, which led to a dramatic collapse of the genre. Two new types of poets emerged. The metaphysical poets were known for their intellectual complexity and sudden leaps of fancy. This term was actually coined by Samuel Johnson and was applied to poets like John Donne and Abraham Cowley, a point that has been asked in exam. Then we have the Cavalier poets, who were quite different. They were more military and known for their swashbuckling attitudes. Their representatives like Richard Lovelace and John Suckling are a key part of this period, and their distinction from the metaphysical poets has been asked in exam. While poetry and drama struggled, prose thrived. The prose of the time became fierce and argumentative, and we saw a remarkable expansion in sermons, pamphlets, and political writings. But throughout it all, one man sustained the reputation of English literature: John Milton. His work alone offered a satisfying quantity and quality that the other poets of the era just couldn't match. Can you recall what some of the main themes of this poetry were? You're right, they mainly focused on either love or religion, and the style of each was quite different. The love poems of this era are rich with elegant language and often dedicated to literary figures like Althea. The characters in these poems can resemble the stock figures of pastoral poetry, and the language, while beautiful, is more of a polite compliment than a deep expression of passion. You'll love this part. The lyric often involves verbal quibbles or courtly jests, making it playful and clever. The key poets who represent this class are Herrick, Lovelace, and Carew, a key fact that has been asked in exam. Other poets like George Wither wrote with a real freshness and sweetness, while Andrew Marvell sometimes revealed genuine passion. Now, let's talk about the religious lyric. These poems were often passionately inspired but could sometimes be vague in their expression, and an incongruity in style sometimes disfigured them. Poets like Crashaw and Vaughan are great examples of this type of lyric. Hold that thought, because we must mention Milton. His lyrics are superbly phrased, but they sometimes lack a certain spontaneity. However, his sonnets are considered among the noblest of their class and show a much deeper and more powerful expression of feeling. It just goes to show you that a great writer can take a familiar form and make it completely their own. Let's talk about two high literary forms from the Age of Milton, the epic and the ode. Can you recall what a true epic is? It's a work that deals with a sublime subject in a grand and inspired manner. Now, here's the golden trick. While some tried to write epics like Cowley's Davides and Darwin's Gondibert, they failed to capture the inner spirit of a true epic. But then came John Milton. His Paradise Lost has a fire and inspiration that those other works lacked, a key point that has been asked in exam. Although some might argue that the subject of the fall of man is too weak for heroic action, Milton's style triumphs in its epic unity and character. Interestingly, his later work, Paradise Regained, is much shorter and weaker than Paradise Lost. Hold that thought, because a new kind of ode became popular during this time. We have Spenser's Epithalamion and Prothalamion as perfect examples of the irregular ode, but it was the Pindaric ode that truly took hold. These odes appear to be irregular, but they are actually stringently structured. Their language is ornately artificial, a style that suited the era's desire for a show of freedom while still maintaining control. You'll love this part. Abraham Cowley wrote the very first Pindaric odes in English, and his Pindaric odes set the standard for this form for generations to come. This is a crucial fact that has been asked in exam. Can you recall how poetry was changing during this time? It was starting to move away from depicting real nature and instead turn towards more conventional, bookish landscapes. This style of poetry shows a growing trend toward a new classicism, a key point that has been asked in exam. It's a style that became increasingly artificial, influenced by the landscapes found in classical works. Some famous examples have been in the exam. Milton's two poems, L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, belong to this class of poetry, a fact that's been asked in exam. The pastorals of Herrick and the religious poems of Crashaw also fit into this category. And don't forget John Denham Cooper's Hill from 1641. This work was highly praised as a descriptive poem, and this has also been asked in exam. Finally, we have William Chamberlain's romantic poem Faronida from 1659. It just goes to show you that poetry was truly entering a new age. Let's dive into the fascinating world of drama and prose during the Age of Milton. Can you recall some of the playwrights who followed in the footsteps of Shakespeare and Johnson? In the world of drama, Massinger's plays helped to sustain the spirit of Elizabethan drama. John Ford followed the tragic school of Webster and Tourneur. You love this part. James Shirley, a very important dramatist from this era, wrote comedies like The Lady of Pleasure in 1637, a point that has been asked in exam. The prose of this period was truly exceptional. The era is known as the golden age of the English pulpit due to the incredible quality of sermons. Jeremy Taylor, Fuller, and Robert South were some of the notable writers of these sermons, a fact that has been asked in exam. And don't forget Richard Baxter's significant work, Saints' Everlasting Rest from 1649. Hold that thought, because other types of prose flourish too. In philosophy, Sir Thomas Browne wrote on moral philosophy, Hobbes contributed to political philosophy, and John Hales focused on religious philosophy. We also saw a rise in historical works by writers like Clarendon and Fuller. Here's something you probably didn't expect. In miscellaneous prose, figures like Milton, Hobbes, and Fuller wrote important pamphlets, a fact that's been asked in exam. Isaac Walton's Complete Angler from 1653 is a beloved classic that has been asked in exam. Finally, James Howell's Letters from 1645 helped introduce a new kind of writing that was a form of early essay journalism.